Welcome to our deep dive on detoxing your mind. You sent over some really interesting notes and excerpts, and we're going to unpack this whole idea of spring cleaning for the brain.
Exactly, like hitting the reset button on your thoughts.
Yeah.
We'll be exploring a bunch of cool concepts, especially from this book called The Inflow Fit Method. Think of it as a practical guide to rewiring your mental patterns.
I love that, a practical guide. So much of what we're diving into today is about taking control of your own narrative and breaking free from those pesky negative thought loops, and even looking at how something like your TV habits can play a role. You ready to jump in?
Absolutely, let's do this.
Okay, one of the first things that caught my eye in your notes was this idea of being the editor of your own life story. It's such a powerful metaphor, don't you think?
It really is. Psychiatrist John Sharp talks about this a lot, and it's a core concept in the Inflow Fit Method, too. We get so attached to these stories we tell ourselves, even if they're outdated or just plain wrong. But the cool thing is we have the power to change the narrative.
That's where it gets really interesting for me. It's not just about recognizing those old stories, but actually challenging them. The notes you sent in even suggest actively looking for evidence that contradicts your negative self-talk, almost like putting your thoughts on trial, which I kind of love.
It's a fantastic approach. Instead of just accepting those negative thoughts as truth, you're saying, hold on, let's see if this actually holds up. And often it doesn't. By questioning our assumptions, we start to see things in a new light. And that can be incredibly liberating.
But wait, doesn't that run the risk of just turning into toxic positivity? Like, what if we're actually dealing with a real problem? Shouldn't we acknowledge those negative feelings?
That's such a great point. Detoxing your mind isn't about denying reality or pretending everything is perfect. It's more about recognizing the difference between fact and truth, something that's emphasized in the source material you provided.
I'm all ears. Explain that one to me. What's the difference?
Think of it this way. A fact is something that objectively happened, while truth is your interpretation of that event. Let's say you get passed over for a promotion at work. The fact is you didn't get the promotion. But your truth, your interpretation could go in so many directions. You could tell yourself, I'm not good enough, which might not be true at all. Maybe there were other factors at play.
So it's about not jumping to conclusions based on our initial reaction.
Exactly. It's about taking a step back and asking, okay, what's the fact here? What's my story about it? And then the real work begins. Choosing to reframe that story in a way that's more empowering and helpful.
That totally resonates with this other idea in the notes about self-appreciation over self-deprecation. It's like instead of dwelling on what we did wrong, we can consciously choose to highlight the positives, the things we're proud of.
It's a subtle shift, but it can make a huge difference in how we feel and how we show up in the world. Think about it. If you're constantly putting yourself down, it's going to be hard to see the good, to appreciate your strengths, or even to take risks and try new things.
It's almost like you're training your brain to focus on the negative, which reminds me of this mind-blowing concept that kept popping up in the materials. The brain as an anticipation machine?
Right. Our brains are wired to predict the future based on past experiences. So if you're constantly dwelling on problems and negativity, you're basically teaching your brain to expect more of the same.
So it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
But if we can flip the script and start focusing on the positive, on what we want to create, then maybe our brain starts to anticipate good things too.
Exactly. It's about rewiring those neural pathways, shifting from a negativity bias to a more optimistic and empowered outlook. And the good news is we have tools to help us do that. One of the most powerful tools is mindfulness. Even just taking a few minutes each day to be fully present can make a huge difference.
You mean like stopping to really notice the taste of your coffee or the feel of the sun on your skin?
Exactly. It sounds so simple, but it's amazing how often we're just rushing through life on autopilot, completely disconnected from the present moment. And when we're not present, it's easy to get swept away by those negative thought patterns.
That makes total sense. Mindfulness is almost like hitting the pause button on those automatic thoughts and giving yourself a chance to choose a different response.
Precisely. And the more you practice mindfulness, the better you get at catching those negative thoughts before they spiral out of control.
So we're talking about being mindful of our thoughts, but what about the things we're taking in from the outside world? The source material also talks about being more selective about the media we consume.
This is huge. We're bombarded with information and stimulation all day long. And it's easy to forget that we have a choice in what we allow into our mental space. Think about it. If you're constantly watching the news or scrolling through social media, your brain is being flooded with negativity, which can definitely impact your mindset.
It's like we're feeding our brains a steady diet of junk food. And just like with our physical health, what we consume mentally has a direct impact on our overall well-being.
Exactly. So instead of passively consuming whatever's thrown at you, start being more intentional about your media choices. Seek out content that inspires you, that makes you feel good, that expands your knowledge in a positive way.
I'm also thinking about the people we surround ourselves with. You know that old saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with?
Absolutely. The energy of the people around us can have a huge impact on our own energy and outlook. If you're constantly surrounded by negativity and drama, it's going to be much harder to maintain a positive mindset. On the flip side, if you have a supportive network of people who lift you up and encourage you, it makes the journey so much easier.
So we've got mindfulness, being mindful of our media intake, and surrounding ourselves with the right people. These are all starting to sound like pieces of a bigger puzzle, right? Like different facets of the same gem.
You're absolutely right. And that gem is what the InflowFit method calls conscious creation. It's about understanding that you have the power to shape your reality through the choices you make, the thoughts you think, and the energy you cultivate.
I love that. Conscious creation. It implies that we're not just victims of circumstance, we actually have agency.
Exactly. You are the architect of your own life. You get to choose the blueprint, the materials, and the design. And while you might not always be able to control the weather, you can definitely choose how you respond to the storms.
But let's be real, it's not always easy to just flip a switch and change our thoughts and behaviors, right? It's got to be an ongoing process, a journey of self-discovery.
It absolutely is a journey. There's no magic bullet here. But even small changes made consistently over time can have a profound impact. And the beauty of it is that you don't have to do it alone. There's so many resources available, from books and podcasts to therapists and coaches, to support you along the way.
Speaking of support, the source material you sent over specifically mentioned meditation as a powerful tool for detoxing the mind. I've dabbled in meditation myself, and I can definitely attest to its benefits.
Meditation is incredible. It's like a mental workout that strengthens your ability to focus, manage stress, and cultivate inner peace. And it's not just about sitting on a cushion in silence. There are so many different types of meditation out there, so you can find one that resonates with you.
I've heard that even just a few minutes meditation each day can make a difference.
Absolutely. Consistency is key. It's like any other skill. The more you practice, the better you become at it. And the benefits are cumulative. The more you meditate, the easier it becomes to access that calm, centered state of mind, even when you're not meditating.
I think that's a really important point. It's not just about carving out time to meditate. It's about integrating those principles of mindfulness and awareness into our everyday lives.
Exactly. It's about bringing that same sense of presence and non-judgment to everything we do, from brushing our teeth to having a difficult conversation. And as we do that, we start to notice those negative thought patterns arise, and we can choose to respond differently.
We're almost coming full circle here, back to that idea of being the editor of our own story. It's about recognizing those old, unhelpful narratives and choosing to rewrite them with a more positive and empowering lens. And it seems like meditation can play a key role in that process.
It absolutely can. By quieting the mind and cultivating self-awareness, meditation helps us to see those thought patterns more clearly and to make conscious choices about how we want to respond to them.
And that ability to choose our response is ultimately where our power lies.
I couldn't agree more. It's about reclaiming our agency and recognizing that we're not at the mercy of our thoughts and emotions. We have the power to choose a different path to create a more fulfilling and meaningful reality.
You know, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from recognizing those kind of sneaky negative narratives to actively rewiring our thought patterns.
It's been quite a journey. But now comes the fun part, like taking all this knowledge and applying it to your own life.
Yeah. Let's bring it home for folks listening in.
Totally.
Think about one specific area where you're holding on to an old story, a story that might not be serving you anymore.
It could be anything like a limiting belief about your abilities, or, a negative pattern in a relationship, or even like a fear that's holding you back from pursuing your dream.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember that example we talked about earlier, the one from the InflowFit method about getting fired from a job?
It's a perfect illustration of how a seemingly negative event can actually be a catalyst for growth and new opportunities.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to the story you choose to tell yourself about it.
Yeah. If you're stuck in a negative thought loop right now, what would happen if you just hit the pause button, and looked for evidence that contradicts that story?
What strengths could you bring to the table? What hidden opportunities might be presenting themselves? Sometimes simply shifting our perspective can make all the difference.
And that's what's so empowering about this whole concept of detoxing your mind. It's not about ignoring problems or pretending like everything's perfect.
Right.
It's about consciously choosing a more positive and empowering narrative for yourself.
It's about recognizing that you have the power to edit and revise your story as you go along.
And, to add to that, the inflow fit method encourages us to actively inject positivity into our narratives instead of dwelling on limitations like, what if you focused on your strengths and the things you're grateful for? Yeah, what if you just started each day by setting an intention to look for the good?
Right.
To celebrate your wins and to approach challenges with a more optimistic outlook.
Yeah.
Small shifts like that, practiced consistently over time, can have a ripple effect on your entire life,
It's like planting seeds of positivity in your mind and watching them grow and flourish.
And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Surround yourself with supportive people, seek out resources that resonate with you, and never underestimate the power of your own mind to create the reality you desire.
This deep dive has given you the tools, and it's up to you to use them.
So go out there, be the editor of your own story, and start writing a chapter filled with positivity, purpose, and joy.
We can't wait to see what you create.